Welcome to today's talk, part of the series Timely Tips for Families During COVID-19. My name is Regina DeMeo. I'm a family law attorney in Maryland and DC. I've been practicing for over 20 years, and I have worked extensively with divorce coaches. I'm so excited to have Cherie Morris, who is a certified divorce coach, and she'll be talking to us today about her book, part of the talk, and the book is called Should I Stay or Should I Go? Thank you so much for being here, Cherie.
Thank you for having me, Regina.
Absolutely. So, I feel like this question is coming up more and more for people during this COVID-19 shelter in place. A lot of people are wondering, in light of some things that have been revealed, whether they should stay or go from their partnership. And I was wondering if you could give some examples of factors that people would consider.
Well, Regina, it is a complicated equation, and it's not one that most people take lightly in my experience. So, since my background is as a lawyer and more analytical in nature, I definitely tend as a coach to think people should go in prepared. And the factors I think they most often consider and should consider at a time that may be emotional and not always practical include their financial situation. Are you prepared to leave your marriage? Do you know what your situation will look like on the other side? There, of course, is the emotional component, and people need to know that they will be heard, listened to, considered in a relationship. And certainly, if there's ever abuse, it becomes not a question, but how to get immediate resources to get the help you need. But for others who are just not feeling emotionally fulfilled, we have to do an evaluation of sorts to see how bad it is for them and whether it could be repaired. And then, of course, if you have children, that's a big category of consideration. What would the children do post divorce? Would they share time between parents, have co parenting? Would it be healthy co parenting? Really contemplate in a really granular way the lives of your children after divorce. And a fourth category that some people don't always consider is what is your health status? What will it look like post divorce? And how will you get health care? Because post divorce, many people don't know that you can no longer be on your spouse's healthcare plan. And although we do have more affordable care policies now, we have to really plan for that. So there are some categories that need to be considered that people, when they're in an emotional state of, I can no longer live with this person, especially during COVID, may not at first glance consider.
That makes sense. What tips would you have for somebody that's discovered a betrayal? And I know there's different types of betrayal, so maybe that's part of your answer.
Well, Regina, I think this is really a great topic, and I really appreciate you bringing it up because I think that there's a lot of things that you should and can do. And the first thing I always want my clients to do, and it's hard to do, is take a deep breath. So you want to be able to act and not react. And that's the hardest thing to do because betrayal really goes to everything that we feel as a person. And having your trust betrayed when you put it in this other person is horrifying and devastating. So I really ask people to take a pause, take a deep breath, and think before you decide how to reveal the betrayal because the steps you take next may define whether you're able to repair, whether you want to repair, and whether you want to go. And so I want the person who has discovered the betrayal to be in the best position to do that. So my tips are think before reveal and get some support, coaching, therapeutic, and maybe even legal support.
If someone were to choose to repair for whatever reason, do you have some tips? Like, what would that look like?
Wow, that's really, really a good question. I think it can look lots of ways for different people, and deciding to repair is an individual decision, right? And sometimes I think that really people don't need to decide at the front end whether they're going to pursue repair to its conclusion, or maybe dip a toe in and try repair. There are lots of ways to go about it. Obviously, as a divorce coach, I believe in coaching support, practical tools. What are you going to do moment to moment when this betrayal comes up and you need to talk about it? How are you going to do that? Because if we walk around escalated all the time, screaming at our partner, if we have children, that's not going to work. So how do we do it? Sometimes in conjunction with the practical, we need a deep dive therapeutically. We need to figure out what's going on underneath to make the repair so that it doesn't happen again if you're going to stay in this relationship. So it's a long road, it's hard work, it's not for everyone. That's for sure.
So the controversy that comes up a lot that I've only recently discovered in the last few years is that, you know, some people feel like, you know, they're being set up by going to counseling, couples counseling, where they have to somehow take ownership of what role did you play in this betrayal happening, right? And so that's something that doesn't sit well with a lot of people, that they're already feeling like a victim, right? A lot of them are like, you're kidding me. Now I have to sit in this session with another counselor who's going to tell me, well, you know, what was your part in making this fall apart? And I think we've discussed Tracy's book, like Tracy Schorn, who wrote Leave a Cheater, Gain a Life. She's really not in favor of that kind of therapy. I mean, to her, it's a no-go. It's a deal breaker that someone betrayed you, especially with a affair. And to her, like, you should just end it and cut your losses. So I guess like that's a long-winded question, but like, have you witnessed the same controversy, and like, what are your thoughts on that controversy?
Absolutely, Regina. And it really gets to the heart of the matter, your discussion of this point and this question. And first of all, I want to say I love Tracy Schorn. She's not only a great writer, obviously, but very clear in her approach. And she's just a wonderful person. So talking to her and reading her book and using what she wrote with clients is very impactful. And then, sort of on the other end of the spectrum, you have someone like Esther Perel, who we've discussed before, Regina, and who is all about sort of connection and figuring out where the connection may have been lost. So, you know, the obvious answer is, well, the connection was lost when, you know, you had an affair with this other person. So she would ask us to say, well, let's look at what was behind that. And I think both things are true, and both things can be true. And I think the approach has to be individual. It has to speak to a person. As a coach, I want to know what your values are on the front end of the relationship, so then we can apply those tools that make sense for you. So for example, you have to understand the kind of cheater you're dealing with, right? Is this a serial cheater who's had a problem that you have long known about and it can't seem to be contained? Or is it a cheating that occurred, never okay, by the way, you know, after a series of years where intimacy was lost on many fronts? And this is not any way to say let's blame the victim here. But for example, in my own long-term marriage, I understand and was, you know, told that I was the one that was the cheater. And that's an interesting place to be, because I did not have an affair, and I felt that my then husband had financially betrayed us. So I definitely had developed a friendship with a man who is now my partner, by the way, in the long run, and I couldn't ask for a better partner. But in no way did I cheat. Did I remove myself emotionally from my husband after a long period of decline in the relationship? Absolutely. But the story that's easy for people to hang on to is that caused the end of the marriage, because it's much more salacious to think that someone had a fling with someone else and that's the cause of the end of the marriage. The truth is, it's much more complicated than that, usually, in my experience with clients and in my own life. And that everybody in the relationship needs to take some responsibility for what has occurred. And I know that's really controversial, and I think it makes our chat a little controversial. And I understand I may hear from people who say you're absolutely wrong, you know, but I think everybody in a relationship is in some fashion probably trying the best they can to do the best they can. And that's also to say, in my opinion, that people, if you may not have broken something entirely. You may not be the sole cause, but you certainly have a responsibility to try to fix it. So to me, the proof is in the doing. Who's showing up to want to try to repair? And everybody, as Tracy says, should have the option of not repairing. This is a very long way of saying, Regina, that I think people need to decide what their boundaries are, what they're willing to commit to, and then understand that the road in either case is not going to be an easy one.
I totally agree, and I will reveal my own situation. There was one time where I was engaged to somebody, and we were having our issues, And before getting married, we went into couples counseling where we discovered that we're really not compatible, and we called off the wedding, right? So I think it's okay to go into couples counseling with the notion that part of what the reveal might be is that you guys really aren't compatible. And I'm really glad that that counselor helped us figure that out.
That's amazing work. And it doesn't always happen that way, because so many times, and I really, commend you and your therapist, because it's too easy to stay attached, even sometimes when you have reason not to. So I do think sometimes it takes more courage to leave than to stay. I also know there's not a lot of glory in staying. And if you've dug in and you're doing the hard work, especially if that repair doesn't take, and then maybe you decide later to leave, I do think you'll never look back and say, well, I certainly can't say I didn't do everything I could have. And I do feel like even in my own long-term marriage, there were many times that weren't visible to others in which I tried and tried and tried again. So I really am a firm believer you can't ever know what's going on in anyone else's relationship or anyone else's home. So be very careful with your judgments. I really like to hold a judgment-proof zone for people who are contemplating the end of their marriage for that very reason. And, as all of us gain life experience, we certainly learn that there's a lot to manage, that there's probably more reality in the gray space than in the black and the white. But again, I think you need real support and people who are going to help you know what tools are going to help you get to the other side of this.
And as a coach, what role do you play in that difficult journey that people go through?
Well, one of the things I set out to do, and, in writing my Should I Stay or Should I Go, is to set at the beginning of our relationship a framework for decision making and really take a very practical and logical approach. So while you have a lot of emotional chaos potentially as my client, I'm helping you stay grounded by creating a framework for decision making. Here's the list. And you may need Regina, and we're going to call Regina here today so that you can get the legal help you need. And then if you need financial help to figure out your path forward, we're going to call that financial professional who can help you do that work. And if you need a therapist at the same time so that you can figure out how your relationship with your mother informs every relationship you've ever had, we're going to have you there too. But in the meantime, I'm going to hold you gently accountable to those values that we set at the beginning of our relationship and take you, I hope, often day by day through texting, emails, phone calls as needed, and of course, seeing you now via Zoom, how you're doing and how you're applying those tools so that we really stay on a specific path to wellness for you and for your family.
That's great. So I'm going to try and share a screen. And if you could just tell people what's the best way to reach you.
Absolutely. The best way to reach me is to go to my website, which is deardivorcecoach.com. I also do work with Kentland Psychotherapy, and you can find me on their website at kentlandpsychotherapy.com. I'm developing a new website that has an approach to all kinds of conflict you may have in your life, which is called recompose.us, and you can take a look there for resources. But the primary way right now to find me in your needs in a relationship are Cherie at deardivorcecoach.com. And I think my telephone number is right there too, 301-928-4695.
Perfect. Thank you so much for tuning in. And Cherie, it was great talking to you and catching up today. If you want to, go ahead.
It's always a great time to talk to you, and you're such a good legal resource for my clients that I hope those in need will reach out to you too.
Thank you. So if you want to watch the other episodes, they're all on YouTube. Look for Gen X Smarty all over social media. Thank you for tuning in and stay safe.